Hi everyone, I'm Alberto and welcome back to Checkpoint, the format where we interview developers and producers in order to give you updates on our games that are currently in development. Today we're going to focus on Radio Commander Pacific 41. We have a special guest today, Liam, who is producer for the game. Hello Liam.
Alberto.
How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you?
I'm great, thank you. Thank you for taking the time to speak to us and to showcase Radio Commander.
Oh yeah, no worries, no worries. Love talking about it.
Awesome. All right, so, well, first off, do you want to give a brief introduction on what you're doing for Radio Commander and what kind of game is Radio Commander?
Sure. So like Alberto said, I am the producer on Radio Commander. I'm working with the devs to make sure that the game turns out good. We do a lot of play testing behind the scenes to make sure that, for our wargaming fans and stuff like that, the game really sort of, hits. As a producer, I really love to play these games. Actually, before I started working for Slytherin, I was a big fan of wargaming in general, tabletop and video, and it's
Well, you still are.
great working on these things.
And you still
So,
are.
yeah, absolutely. Not going to burn out anytime soon. So Radio Commander Pacific specifically is the next entry in the Radio Commander series. Before this, there was Vietnam. And Pacific is the first entry we have planned in a series of Radio Commander titles. Pacific is obviously set in the Pacific Theater, and you're in command of the United States forces. So that includes soldiers, infantry, Marines, tanks, and all of these things can be supported in scenarios by aircraft, naval gunfire, and other specific support units. Like you can have flamethrowers attached to your troops, you can have scouts attached to your troops. You have all these different assets that you use to win a mission.
Sounds good. So, as you said, Radio Commander Pacific 41 is the first entry of a brand new series of titles that Slytherin is going to be publishing in the Radio Commander franchise. But of course, Radio Commander, this one won't be the first Radio Commander title. The first one was Radio Commander Vietnam, which was released, which was published by Games Operators a few years back. And we can say that it was a very, very creative and original title because I'd like to ask you about what makes the Radio Commander franchise unique and original compared to other strategy games.
Sure. So some of you might be familiar with the concept of Kriegspiel, which is an old-timey, old-fashioned war game where you have an umpire that basically plays the game blind. So you as the player don't know where your units or the enemy's units are. You have an umpire telling you where everything is. Well, I think Radio Commander is kind of somewhat similar to that, where your knowledge of where your units are and the enemy is incredibly limited. You basically are modeled as a commander. You have your radio, and you have to ask everybody where they are and what they're doing. And if you're not asking them where they are and what they're doing, you're just completely clueless about where your units are. So you'll see on the footage right now, there's these tokens on the map of tanks and infantry and a destroyer. Those things are not actually being reported to me live. I have to ask them where they are and put the tokens there myself. And the same is true with enemy contacts that you make. Your units will radio in, hey, we see enemy infantry at these coordinates, and it's up to you to keep track of them. You have to put tokens down to show where the enemies are. You have to keep asking your guys status updates about how the fighting's going on. You're very blind going into these games, which you might not think it creates a lot of anxiety and a lot of tension in the game as you're sort of marching forward. If you don't have any clue where the enemy is, it takes almost a little bit of moral courage to kind of decide to take a course of action when you're almost completely blind.
Yeah. Also, I would say that there's almost a time management aspect to it, in the sense that, of course, I mean, you can decide to pause the action. It's in real time, but you can slow it down, you can fast forward, and if I remember correctly, you can also pause the action in order to be able to move all the tokens accordingly and to readjust the map as you see fit. But receiving a lot of reports at the same time can get overwhelming and it can get stressful. And I would imagine that recreating this sort of information overflow was kind of the point in this situation.
Yes, yes. The two time speeds are actually real time, which means 1 second is, in real life is 1 second in game time, or you can speed it up to 1 second is basically a whole minute. So if you're playing at that 1 minute speed, you are getting a tons of status updates and reports constantly from your units in the field. And I find for these scenarios too, you could either take it very slow and very deliberate, and you could spend quite a bit of time on each individual scenario, or you can try and rush through it and try and beat it as quickly as possible. But then chances are your score won't be the best, just because these encounters really require a lot of planning and preparation, and there's only so much time you have to beat the scenario, and your troops get tired. So if you send your troops in a long march over a hill and it doesn't turn out very well, and you're running low on time, well, if you want to beat the scenario, you have to take some gambles, you have to take some risks.
Yeah, sounds about right. Let's talk about the user interface, which you might define as a diegetic or semi-diegetic UI. But Liam, maybe people won't be familiar with the term. What does semi-diegetic mean in this case?
So diegetic or semi-diegetic means that you're interacting with objects in the environment that if this were a real thing, a real game, or sorry, a real life event happening, it's what you'd be using. So let's say there's a game where you go pick up a radio to talk to somebody through an earpiece, or um, move around tokens on the map, and that moves units. That's all very diegetic. In this case, you're in a you can't see with the gameplay now, but you are in a 3D rendered environment of a command center, and you are interacting with the map, and you do have tokens you're pulling around on the map, and you have a ruler that you're using sometimes even to check distances. It's all very kind of tabletop simulator ish, if anyone's played that game before, where you're physically moving objects around on the map. Um, it can make a quite immersive environment. There's constantly in the background to chatter going on as your radio operators are making calls, as you're getting contact reports. The voice acting we have right now is placeholder and a little rough at the moment, but there's gunfire in the background if units are engaged. There's all these things that are trying to build up to create a sort of a vibe, a mood. And what we're aiming for really is you're in a command tent or on a ship during World War II, getting tons and tons of status reports and updates from your frontline units.
Also, we can't really see it now because we're looking at the map, but there are a number of 3D environments which are basically your command room. You're free to look around, but yeah, basically the map itself is where you're going to take all your decisions. And let's talk about these maps because, as you can see, there's quite a bit of handwritten marks on it. For instance, enemy stronghold, blah, blah, blah. There's a bunker marked down. But you're also able to use some map tools. And if I remember correctly, you're also able to write on the map yourself and to take notes on the map itself, right?
Yeah, actually, I'm just going to interrupt you for just 1 second. If you'll
Yeah,
see in the log, I moved my destroyer way too close to the minefield right there, and
yeah.
it just sunk. And so, yeah, there's a lot of icons on the map to break down. There's sea mines off the coast, which my destroyer just ran into. So that was a mistake on my part. And yeah, there's your objectives are written down in the marker there. There's built up areas. You can see where sort of the roads get concentrated, and you have the small rectangles on the map. That's some very built up terrain. Um, there's difference between forest and open plains, that sort of thing. And yeah, there is a lot of interaction with the map where you are doing things like taking notes on the map, or like I said, using range markers and rulers to sort of establish how far these distances are. Um, and certain units are very limited by what they can do on the map. So tanks, for example, tanks cannot go through the jungle. They really like to stay on roads. So we have these built up Pacific islands with potentially lots of buildings and forests and mountains on them. And if you have tanks, which are a very powerful unit to have in a mission that moves way faster than infantry and can just ignore a lot of under fire penalties that infantry get. Well, those tanks are, you're very limited. If you look at this map here, the number of roads that you can use to sort of get up to where that bunker is, you're very limited by the approaches you can take. So it's um, a sort of push pull versus, do you want to try and flank around with your infantry, come from an unexpected direction, do something very clever, or do you want to go up and have the tanks with you to benefit from their firepower? The map is very crucial. You'll also see too, there's a height map here with the contours that are drawn there. So where that bunker is, is sort of on a ridge line that's running southwest to northeast up the side of the island, and that ridge sort of dominates this scenario. It's a very important area on the map.
Yeah, one of the skills that the player needs to have in order to play this game accordingly and to execute strategies that make sense is to be able to read the map accurately, to get the right type of information they need to get in order to take the right kind of decisions. So, for instance, how does a player understand the height of or the altitude of a specific point? Or, for instance, if I were to if I were to try and determine the altitude of that bunker, how would I do that as a player?
So this is going to go back to probably high school for a lot of people, which is map reading. So if you'll see the contours that are sort of drawn on the map, each one of those is a change in elevation, up, basically. So as you'll see, so to the right and left of the bunker, the contours that are drawn on the map, each one of those is going to be an increase in elevation. I'm not 100% remembering how exactly that is in meters, but every single increase in elevation will give a bonus of combat power if a unit is higher up than their enemy is. So whether it's the enemy occupying that high ground or you occupying that high ground, you'll get a combat bonus firing down on the enemy. Likewise, you'll see some of the areas along the coast where there's a lot of roads and a lot of tiny rectangles with different coloration. That is built up terrain. So there's lots of buildings there. You'll get a big defensive bonus modifier for fighting from that terrain as well. At the same time, there will be certain weapons that let you negate that. So you'll see grill work, my infantry unit on the bottom right there with the token. They have a little flame icon next to their name. They have flamethrowers. And so those flamethrowers will negate the bonuses that come from some built-up terrain, like those built-up areas, and also that bunker up there. If they can get nice and close, they will negate the defensive bonus that a lot of the infantry is getting from fighting from that bunker. So there's a lot of push-pull. There's a lot of different sort of behaviors that units have in built-up terrain. Tanks are a little bit vulnerable, especially if they're separated from their infantry in built-up terrain. If the enemy get close and the tanks don't have infantry support, they're very vulnerable. You might see that later in the scenario that I let the tanks get a bit too far ahead and they run into trouble. You can see here as well. So we're moving the infantry forward, for example, to take this bunker, and it's a tough position because it's quite high ground up there. So we're going to take a pretty bad combat malice for attacking it. Really, this is actually a bit of a reckless attack on my part, but you'll see sort of what it looks like if an attack doesn't go so well because you're just trying to advance into the enemy face on. You've lost your destroyer because I was a little silly with it getting too close to the minefield, and some aircraft have gotten shot down. Now, I could go and look for the anti-aircraft guns that shot them down, but instead I went forward, and you'll see without my support assets, if you keep checking the combat log, my units don't do very well. You really need to leverage sort of all the different combat assets you have to do things like taking out these big bunkers. This is mission 6, so by this point they're expecting you to we're expecting you to sort of have a bit of game knowledge about how to approach this scenario. So there's a bit of a challenge here, definitely, compared to earlier missions, which are a bit more, handholdy.
Okay, sorry for this, by the way, my microphone wasn't working anymore, but they replaced the batteries. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Awesome, that's great. Okay, so yeah, speaking of combat mechanics, compared to Vietnam, this is deeper. I remember we were discussing with the devs the necessity to enhance the nature of a combined arms factor to make combat feel more tactical, more to give deeper and more meaningful combat mechanics. I know that you were just, talking about it just right now, but I wanted to ask you what in your mind still needs a bit of improvement, and which kind of combat mechanics would you like to hone a bit more before we are launching the game?
Gosh, yeah. So already there's some interesting ways that sort of your troops can, I guess, lose without all getting killed. So if you send them on a long march around an island, they'll get tired and they'll fight worse, or they'll run out of ammo. or if they get flanked, then they'll fight very poorly. If you sort of surround the enemy, they get some pretty bad debuffs to combat, and they'll take losses pretty quickly. Likewise, I think I mentioned this already, but tanks, if their tanks are caught alone without infantry support, they also fight quite poorly. If there's one thing that I could say maybe that we're sort of aiming for that we need to do another pass on, it's probably just more sort of varied encounters in our scenario design. So one thing that we're really pushing for and working hard on right now is just trying to make sure that each mission can be completed multiple different ways without there being too much of a golden path. We want to make sure that players aren't punished for trying to do sort of novel solutions to these missions. So we want to make sure that the optimal way to play it isn't just sort of blobbing your guys and thunder running down a road and just shooting up everything you can. We want there to be if you think of something clever, you can do it and you can beat the mission and get a good score for it. So the big push, I guess, right now that we're really sort of spending a lot of extra time on is just refining scenario design and just trying to get it as good as possible.
Mm-hmm. Sounds good. How satisfied are you with the current status of radio barks? For instance, if you ask for a combat status update on one of the units, how happy are you with how that's working?
So I think the information that we're giving you is quite good. What we're waiting on until basically we're waiting for more delivery of script is we really want to give this script a lot of attention. This is a World War II title. We want it to feel like a World War II title, like you're talking to some officer from the 40s. We want this to feel like I don't know, the Caine Mutiny or like the Pacific or something like that. We want it to feel authentic. So we are going to do place a lot of emphasis on sort of the voice acting and the script to make sure that it really feels authentic. So right now what you're seeing for now is still sort of mostly placeholder. The information is all very accurate, but it's not quite the tone we're aiming for right now. We're going to definitely be spending a lot of time and attention to make sure it sounds like it's Eugene Sledge with the Old Breed kind of stuff that you're reading and seeing with this game.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I understand. If I remember correctly, this one is the tutorial mission, the first mission in the campaign. Correct me if I'm wrong, which is one of the smaller scenarios in the game. I wanted to ask you, in the campaign, how does the scope increase during the campaign, and how does it compare to the scope that players might be familiar with in Vietnam? Because in Vietnam, you were playing with a few companies, and there weren't actually a few platoons, if I remember correctly. You weren't executing large or vast operations, as it might be the case in this game.
Yeah, so I'm no expert on Vietnam, but if I remember correctly, each unit in Vietnam was just a platoon. So each one of these tokens was just a platoon. That's the case with this scenario as well. Wake's a very small mission. Some of the larger ones, we scale that up. So rather than these being individual platoons, they're companies. So you're commanding up to sort of battalion level force. One thing we found in playtesting with this interface is that 5 to 6 units is about where people are comfortable with. Any more than that, and you start to get very overwhelmed by all of the reporting that comes in, which is actually kind of authentic. Most of the times, if you see military formations IRL, they're sort of like to do things in threes, especially, and they find that 5 is where people start to get a little overwhelmed with information for subunits, basically. So we're kind of keeping it limited to that in terms of just the number of units you'll have in a scenario. I'd say a very normal sort of accompaniment for a later scenario would be 3 units of infantry, either platoon or company scale, 1 of tanks, and then some aircraft or some offshore naval gunfire is a pretty normal sort of spread. And you can get a lot done with that. That naval gunfire, we've used the debug menu before to sort of see what the casualties are when you call an artillery strike. And that naval gunfire that we have in this game, or the airstrikes, if they land accurately, they do some damage. It's quite impressive what they can do. You really feel it if your ships run out of ammunition. That's another thing that can happen is your ships and aircraft can either run out of ammunition or not be available because they've been firing so much the barrels get overheated. So there's even though it's a fairly simple in terms of your sort of I guess overall gameplay loop, there's a lot of soft factors that sort of keep adding up, and they can really screw you over if you're not careful in managing them. So yeah, I'd say Saipan's one of our larger scenarios, and then that one you're in command of basically a whole supported battalion, or reinforced battalion, I guess is what you'd call it.
What about naval and area support?
Yeah, so Saipan, you could see it. We had a destroyer that I got way too close to the mines and it got blown up. Those destroyers can provide naval gunfire. Same with aircraft. The aircraft can come in. You can choose the direction they appear on the map. So you could say, tell them to fly in from either the northeast, south, or west, depending on where you think the enemy might have anti-aircraft guns. And if that aircraft comes under fire, they'll tell you, hey, I'm under fire from an anti-aircraft gun from the northeast. And then you could tell that aircraft will maybe wave off because they might get shot down. And then you've got a new sort of mission that you can give yourself, which is, I know there's an anti-aircraft gun nearby. I need to go get rid of it if I want to call in airstrikes and air support. So there's a lot of things quite often in this scenario that might sort of impede your support units, and you need to find them and destroy them in order to have a sort of easier run. We do have a scoring system at the end of missions where you will be ranked by the number of losses you sustained and the number of casualties you inflicted. And if you really want to get the highest level score possible and not suffer horrendous casualties, you really are incentivized to try and take out enemy shore batteries or enemy anti-aircraft guns, so you can use all your support assets to just absolutely pound detected enemy units into the ground. Using your infantry and tanks very, I guess, forwardly without using your support assets is a recipe for taking some pretty bad losses in this game.
Thank you, Liam. So in terms of the campaign, you have a linear selection of scenarios, in the sense that you will be progressing from one scenario to the next. So far, which ones are your favorite scenarios and why?
My favorite scenarios?
Yeah.
So the one that we just saw, Saipan, is pretty up there. That's mission 6. Saipan's interesting because it gives you a lot of support units and sort of the full spread of units basically to accomplish your task. You've got your 3 infantry, one of which is a flamethrower. You have your tanks, you have your aircraft, you have your destroyer. And you have some really dug-in Japanese positions to sort of uproot, and it's tricky. It's a difficult scenario, especially for your first time. These scenarios also are not always very straightforward. Sometimes there's a surprise that we just don't tell you about because we're mean like that. It's something that you as a commander wouldn't know about. Sometimes just leaps out at you, and you have to respond to it accordingly. And I've mentioned I quite like Saipan, and so I'm not going to go too much into detail, but yeah, a lot of these scenarios do have some surprises to them. Enemy units coming from unexpected directions, and you get a radio call saying, hey, what gives? We didn't know that there were enemies here. This is bad. We need to do something about this. There's all kinds of little things in this game that will sort of jump out and frighten you, which adds to the tension that I mentioned earlier. That's trying to make a plan when you don't know where the enemy is, and you're entirely reliant on the eyes and ears of your guys on the other end of the radio to detect them is surprising how much, I guess, anxiety it gives you. How exciting it can be to not know. It's almost a bit like a horror game sometimes with how things jump out and startle you.
Well, I guess you're feeling anxiety also due to the immersion factor in the game, in the sense that since you feel as a commander, you feel responsible for the lives of the troops you're commanding. So I guess in this case, the game is doing a good job at immersing yourself in the shoes of a commander.
Yeah, I think that's an important thing too. That when we do another pass on sort of the script and voice acting, we'd really like to aim for is a feeling of, I guess, intimacy.
Yeah.
That each one of these commanders will have a sort of distinct voice to them, um, that you will sort of recognize. And if they go down, if you feel bad about it, good. You should feel bad about it because you could have done better. So yeah, we're hoping to pull at your heartstrings a little bit and make you emotionally invested with it. And I mean, that's the nice thing about, I think, a title like this, where it's almost all voice acted and sort of it's a bit impersonal, but at the same time, you're on the radio with them so much, you recognize the voices distinctly between the first platoon, second platoon, third platoon. So that's one thing we're definitely hoping to get out of this game. And yeah, that's one thing we still have to do. Basically, we're still hard at work with this. We're still working on missions and scenarios. Like I said, we still want to punch up the script and get some voice direction going on with this one. So there's still a decent bit of work to do, but we're making good progress right now.
Awesome. That's good. I had another question for you. Still about the combat mechanics. So, since planning successful attacks will be part of the game and will be an important part of the game, normally in strategy games, when you're executing any kind of maneuver and you're actually fighting, either you see the outcome of the fight, and if you lost, then you start wondering why you lost, or you see the ongoing status of the fighting. And normally, different types of games, they give you information on why you're losing. So for instance, in Battle Plan, when you're attacking and the attack is not going your way, the game tells you what you're doing wrong, or rather why the enemy has an advantage in this case. How does it work here? In the sense that, of course, if an attack isn't going well, you will get radio feedback. Your officers will be telling you, oh yeah, we're getting pummeled, we're being rejected, we're not able to get through, blah, blah, blah. But what are your tools? What are the tools at your disposal in order to understand what you're doing wrong, what you could do differently in order to make it successful?
So I think the main two tools that you have here it really is the map and the radio command interface. So you'll see on the map there is a legend that you can refer to that tells you what terrain types there are. And so normal sort of strategy game conventions are in effect here, which is if you're in the open and the enemy's in cover, you're not going to do very well. You want to fight the enemy while you're in cover and they're not. If they are in cover, you want to flank them. That's another one. The other point, too, is that your commanders, when you radio them and ask them about status reports, they do give you some very useful information. They'll tell you what enemy contacts they see, what their strength is that they estimate. So they'll say, hey, I think that's a platoon strength enemy over there. And they'll also mention if the enemy has any attached weapons to them. So one of the ones that you really have to look at in a lot of missions is, hey, we see enemies and they have anti-tank guns. Okay, well, maybe keep the tanks away from those guys, because those guys are an extra threatening. So your main two ones definitely are your radio interface and the map. The other thing too that you can actually ask your guys is their condition. So if they say, hey, we're getting tired, hey, we're low on ammo, hey, we've already taken some pretty nasty casualties and we have a lot of wounded, those are all things to make you think, well, maybe these guys should go in the rear for a little bit and they're the reserve now, and a unit that's less chewed up, has more ammo, can take the lead for a while. It's a lot of sort of normal best strategy game practices, but you have to figure it out a little bit yourself by talking to your guys and by really studying the map. It's not just immediately sort of fed to you via sort of colored bars or anything like that. It really is narrative about how you're sort of finding this stuff out about the condition of your troops. Sometimes they'll even warn you over the radio, hey, we're getting overrun and we're about to disintegrate. They'll tell you that over the radio. And at that point, your best course of action quite often is give them the withdrawal order and tell them, okay, retreat. If you need to fall back, go to where, find some high ground, find some place in the rear that's a bit safer and get them out of there, because they're pretty vocal about telling you if things are going badly.
Sounds good. So basically, what you can do is to play the game intuitively, try to behave as a real commander would behave, try to apply common sense as your basic knowledge of how military works, and then you should be at least fine, or at least you should be able to prevent the most obvious mistakes. But personally, I think it's the best way to play a war game or a strategy game in general. I mean, I'm not the type of player who likes to read hundreds of pages long manuals. I'd rather start getting into it and basically apply what knowledge I have of military warfare and history of warfare, and just play based on that. That's just it, really. Okay, so I think that sounds great. By the way, earlier the video was showcasing all the map tools that you can use in order to manipulate the map, in order to draw on the map, to paint on the map, to add more information, to add more tokens, to move the tokens. And I do think it's great. I love it. I really think that the players will have a really lot of fun with it. By the way, well, basically people can see it, but as you can see the actual coordinates. In this case, 245, 886. Those are the coordinates that you have to insert manually when giving orders through the radio. So basically, if you want to move one of the Guild War II to that position, you need to send an order to Guild War II, give them the move order, and then give them that set of coordinates. And then we start moving there. It won't be immediate, of course. You will need to get an update on their progress. But yeah, that's how giving orders work. All right. So I believe that we have covered a lot of the topics that we have planned. Just so everyone knows, tomorrow we are going to be posting the first dev diary, correct me if I'm wrong, yeah. The first dev diary for the game. So we hope that everyone is excited. I have 2 more questions for you, Liam. The first one, so in the next few months, what areas of development would you like to be focusing more? And also, what areas of development do you feel the need for our testers to be more vocal on? As in, what would you like to test them, essentially?
So I guess, like I've said earlier, it's the scenario design that I think we really need to nail, and that we've been spending a lot of time and effort on. Just making sure, like I said, that if you come up with something novel that sort of we didn't expect, that you can do it and it'll come off. And if it's clever and fresh, you get away with it clean, and you get a good score in the scenario. Is what we really want to aim for. There's a lot of sort of ambiguity, I guess, in this game about sort of where the enemy is and what they're doing, because we hide a lot of information from you. So we want you to sort of explore the options that you have in this game about solving and fixing the mission and beating it. So that's, I think, an area that we really want to spend a lot of time and effort on, and we've been doing that for the past few months now, of just making sure that the scenarios are you're not forced down a sort of single linear path of sort of how to complete a mission, that you do have your sort of options laid out there. I'm sorry, I'm blanking. What was your second question?
I haven't asked that yet.
Okay. Sorry.
It's a bit more spicy. So basically,
okay, yeah, go ahead.
Well, first off, guys, do we have any questions from the chat or the community? No. Okay. It looks like we were already giving them enough information. But yeah, my second question. So, since we have a very original, very creative, and very unique system of combat, or a war game system, really, hypothetically, what kind of setting would you like to apply this with or on? If you were to make, I don't know, a fantasy game or a sci-fi game or any other historical game with this system, what would that be?
Are we announcing something here?
No,
Because I could.
we're not.
Okay.
Just
So,
curiosity.
yeah. So I guess half disclosure for people back there. We do have some other ideas that are cooking in the works, basically for
No
Radio
spoilers.
Commander's model. Yeah. So
We can give
Um,
spoilers.
yeah, no, not going to spoil anything just yet. Do any announcements? One thing that personally I think this would be really well suited for, something horror related, something. All the ambiguity about this, the fact that you don't know where the enemy is. If we were to do some cosmic horror stuff, maybe I don't know, Delta Green or something like that, to get very specific, I guess is something like that one day would be, I think, a fantastic idea. If you were getting helmet cam footage and just saw some strange runes scrawled in blood on a wall or something like that, and it's up to you as the player in your command tent to figure out what's going on. And then if you lost, you get 5 Nights at Freddy jump scared because you lost the mission. That would be pretty great too. So I think this would be incredibly well suited as sort of a format for horror games and stuff like that going forward.
Sounds good. Who knows?
That's my
maybe
pie in the sky idea.
Maybe there will be a Delta Green Radio Commander game one day.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, so thank you so much, Liam. We hope that you guys enjoyed it. Let us know if you have any additional question. And so see you in the battlefield then.
All right. Take care, everybody.